what's the temperature of this organization when it comes to the trade deadline on February 6th?
Well, look, I think we know Nico Harrison has been here for 3 trade deadlines, and we've seen at least one trade at every deadline. So the assumption with the Mavs is always they're going to do something. But the difference between deadline number 4 of the Nico Harrison era and the first 3, the Mavericks faced varying degrees of desperation at all previous 3 deadlines, and especially last season. Like, they knew they had to make moves. They were deep in the talks to get Kuzma. Kuzma told the Wizards actually went to Kyle Kuzma, even though he doesn't have a no trade clause. The Wizards went to him and said, do you want to stay? Do you want to go? He said, I'd rather stay. And the Mavs immediately pivoted and made 2 trades for Gafford and PJ Washington. This trade deadline is a completely different situation because Luka is still out. We know Luka most likely is not going to be back with his team until at some point in February. Nico Harrison recently went on the new Mavs Step Back pod via Substack with our pal Dalton Trigg and flat out said the Mavs are not going to make a short-term trade in reaction to injury because, again, when you don't even know when Luka is going to be back and how long it's going to take him to get back to full speed, I don't know why people would want them to. The Mavs have very limited trade assets left at this point. They've got 2 firsts they can move. They do have a couple movable contracts, but do you want them rushing out making a trade when the team is not even full strength? I wouldn't. I don't think there's an easy fix out there that's just going to repair them now. Now, everybody says, Herb Jones, go get Herb Jones. Go. Yeah, no, the Mavs would love Herb Jones. The Mavs are undeniably fans of Herb Jones, but there's multiple obstacles working against a Herb Jones trade. Number one being, to this point, the Pelicans have consistently discouraged teams from going after him. Doesn't mean they won't ultimately cave and trade him, but it's going to cost a lot to trade for Herb Jones, realistically more than the Mavs could offer, even if they were willing to do it. And on top of all that, Herb Jones is out right now with the labrum tear in his right shoulder. It's his non-shooting shoulder, but we don't even know when Herb Jones is going to be able to play again. So I think the Herb Jones conversation, I think it would it's time to move off that because there are way too many factors against being able to get him. Now, in recent days, there's been a suggestion that the Mavericks are dangling Daniel Gafford or, whatever word you want to use, dangling, shopping. The way it's been painted to me is that it would be a misnomer to say they are shopping Daniel Gafford. Because, look, I think there are teams out there that would like Gafford. There are a lot of teams out there that want big men. Big men are in demand. But are there certain trades that the Mavericks would be willing to surrender Daniel Gafford? I'm sure that's the case. And getting a wing, upgrading their wing defense is certainly something that the Mavericks would like to do. But if you trade Gafford, you've severely weakened your center rotation. And we know that Derek Lively, as well as he has played and as highly as he is thought of, he does miss time. So are you prepared to give up Gafford to maybe address one void, but create another one if there's no proven big man behind Lively? So it's just in the situation the Mavericks are right now, I don't think it's easy for them to make a move. I will not be surprised at all if they come up with something. There are still 17 days to go before the trade deadline, and the Mavericks have been very aggressive under Nico Harrison, so it wouldn't shock me if they manufacture some kind of move, but I think they're going to proceed with much more caution at this deadline than we've seen in the previous 3. Because again, this team is just not right. I mean, and it's not just not having Luka. There are too many injuries today. How many key players were missing? Luka, Grimes, Lively, Exum. We still haven't seen for 1 second this season. Hardy, it's just they're not. There is no trade deadline fix that can compensate for that many rotation players missing.
So if I'm trying to follow the breadcrumbs here, Mark, because everyone speaks in riddles, right? Sometimes. So if we should believe, because I think we should believe that the Mavs will make a move, but we should also believe that they're not necessarily willing to include Gafford because it's kind of whack-a-mole at that point. Like, yeah, sure, we get that, but now we got – so then how or maybe not even who, like how is it possible for them to get a guy that's good enough to play in the rotation without giving up someone that's also in the rotation?
That's the thing. I don't know that it is.
Yeah.
I mean, that is they had to use up a lot of trade capital to get Washington and Gafford in here a year ago. Those moves worked out pretty much as well as they possibly can. I mean, they didn't lead to a championship, but on April 15th-ish, when the playoffs were about to start, I don't remember many of us, me included, saying the Mavs are about to make a finals run. I mean, they went to the finals after making those two trades. So it's, again, like, that's the consistent. When I ask about trade stuff, that's what I keep hearing back is that would they like to do something? Yes. Can they do something given what they have in the trade cupboard? It might not be possible. And as well, and I want to, you guys know I'm a huge Najee Marshall fan. The knife he's adapted really well here, but it is true. The one thing this team really misses from if you compare it to last year's team, they do miss the length and skills on the wing that Derrick Jones Jr. has in terms of guarding opposition scorers. That's what they miss. But all teams want an extra wing defender and a good, not just an extra one, a good one.
Right.
So it's like, do you give up? So we know they have 2 first-round picks to trade. Gafford. Now, Moxie Kleba's on an expiring contract. You could move him if you had to. Jaden Hardy, because his, normally when you sign an extension, you got to wait 6 months, but his extension was small enough that Jaden Hardy actually is trade eligible immediately if they needed to move him. But I've seen people throw out Grimes has played too well. You can't trade him. And
I was about to say, I was going to ask you, but I was going to say that it does feel like it does feel like if they wanted to make a tangible upgrade in terms of wing defense, and quite frankly, I think at least for smaller wings guards, I think he's their best defender on those type players. But it does feel like, they are obviously going into the summer where they would have to extend him as a restricted free agent. And he does not seem preferred to close games over, say, Klay Thompson or, quite frankly, often Najee Marshall. Maybe some of that is that he just pairs better with Luka, and Luka's been out a lot. For example, I think, some of the things he does really well is coming off, screens and handoffs and things like that. And that's something when Kyrie's on the court, he's using a lot of those as well. I personally wouldn't do it. I like Quentin Grimes a lot. I think he's been fantastic. But the more I look at this roster, just trying to put myself in their mind and what they're thinking is that, if Grimes helped you get a player that would close games for you or had a chance to close games for you and upgraded your perimeter defense, all I'm saying, again, this is not my endorsement of that idea necessarily. I am saying that surely he has some value around the league with the way he's played, with him just being 24. And maybe
whoever trades for him, though, would have to do so wanting to extend him. Right? Which does that complicate it or does that make it even better?
I mean, it probably means it's likelier you're trading him to a team that isn't trying to win now, right? Mm-hmm. Like a team that's willing to say, yeah, we like this guy.
I think the other thing though here is like wing defenders who have really good wing defenders are as coveted as shooters. So it's like the price tag to get Herb Jones. I
think that's why people were stuck on him. Because he's the only clear guy that was maybe movable who is like all defense level.
And when you hear the chatter, it's like New Orleans ain't just giving him up for some seconds. Like Herb Jones is going. If they trade him at some point, they're gonna get a nice return for Herb Jones,
right? And they should for an All-NBA defensive player.
The Mavs are gonna have to decide how much they're willing to give up. But I mean, that's what made Derrick Jones Jr. very unique. Is that they got him for a minimum. I mean, that was a home run. That was a grand slam. I mean, they got him for the minimum. and he, outperformed that number by miles and miles and miles. And you saw the way they approached it in the offseason, the Mavs basically set with, an internal limit. They were like $327 is what they were willing to pay for Derrick Jones Jr. Derrick Jones wanted more. He got more from the Clippers. They were able to get Najee Marshall at that same price. So they pivoted to Najee. And like I said, I think Najee Marshall has been a very welcomed contributor to this team and does a lot of things and is more versatile offensively than Derrick Jones Jr. But it is true. You cannot deny they miss Derrick Jones Jr.'s wing defense. They miss it, and that is a void on this team. But, it's a great, we'll see if something comes up where, like, you have to surrender Gafford. I mean, that's going to be a fascinating call because you could make that trade, and then what are we going to sit here and say? The Mavs don't have enough behind Lively. I mean, sure. And then every show will be that they're not big enough as a team, and they're putting too much on 20-year-old Derek Lively.
We all silly like the mayor.